Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's gone. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now a three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. Ja Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. On this episode, I'm going to wrap up draft night for the Grizzlies, which was very quiet following up the fireworks of the Marcus Smart for Tyus Jones trade. The draft night ended up going very conventionally for the Grizzlies. They did not get involved by trading up. This is the first time that Zach Kleiman has not traded up in the draft to make a selection. This is the first time since 2017 that the Grizzlies haven't had a first-round pick. The Grizzlies stayed at pick 45. They took Gigi Jackson, who will be headed to the Hustle, going to sign a two-way contract with the Grizzlies. They used their second-round pick, the 56th selection, to take an overseas draft and stash prospect. And because of all that, the word I use for the Grizzlies draft week is conventional. And I don't mean that as an insult in any way. I mean, when you looked at what the Grizzlies needed, or what most people thought what the Grizzlies needed, it was a path similar to the path they took. And in previous seasons, I think the Grizzlies surprised people with their strategy sometimes. They traded up for some unexpected players. They made deals that were unexpected. And certainly the Marcus Smart deal, I think, was a surprise to me, to others who follow the Grizzlies, and to those who cover the NBA. But the idea of trading this year's first-round pick for a veteran player, someone who can help right now, that was conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom for the Grizzlies was, all right, here's our strategy. Trade for someone who can help you, who's a veteran. Use your second-round picks. Use one on a two-way guy. Use another as someone you can stash so you maintain roster flexibility. You're going to keep your third two-way spot open. You're going to keep a roster spot open so then you can sign more veteran help in free agency. And the Grizzlies have never gone this route before under Zach Kleiman. It's always been, we trade to get the guys we want. Maybe we make big swings in the draft. Maybe we get guys who the conventional draft experts don't love, but all like the NBA draft nerds are fired up about. Like the Twitter draft people are like, yeah, Brandon Clark, he's awesome. Yeah, Desmond Bane, he's awesome. But even like Santi Aldama, no one saw coming. This draft, maybe there was a discipline among the draft room to be like, hey, listen, we don't care who's slipping in the draft. Our plan is we got our guy. We got Marcus Smart. Now we're going to get somebody for our two-way deal, and then we're going to maintain this open roster spot so we can sign someone in free agency. And I'm thrilled by that prospect. I still think when you consider the trade for Marcus Smart, you can argue a couple different sides of it and not maybe be overwhelmingly in support of maybe the cost of sending out this year's pick and the Warriors pick next year and losing Tyus Jones. And it does not totally fulfill all the Grizzlies team needs. It does not make them like a clear title contender. But it improves the team on the court this year, period. I'm not ready for any argument that Tyus Jones made the Grizzlies better more than Marcus Smart would. I think that's not true in the least. I think Marcus Smart can take over the backup point guard role, but more importantly has way more utility to his game. He can play alongside Ja and Desmond, no problem. He can guard the best guy on the other team almost every night. I have concerns about slippage of his performance due to his age, but he's going to be better than anyone they had on the roster at guarding the other team's best wing. So I think adding Marcus Smart, if you ignore the price, makes the team flat out better. And again, I like to re-emphasize, keeping a roster spot open is huge. Not only does it give you flexibility if you want to make another trade and you could bring in 2 players if you need to, or you send out one guy, bring in 2, but the ability to add a veteran free agent, and maybe I shouldn't get too excited because maybe they're not going to do that much. There are salary concerns going forward once Desmond Bane signs an extension with Marcus Smart making close to $20 million each of the following 2 seasons. This is the 2025-2026 seasons. Luxury tax concerns are going to be large. Trying to avoid the second apron is going to be large. I didn't mention this last episode. They're probably going to need to find a way to get rid of John Konchar's salary, which again goes back to that extension being kind of weird. Maybe one of the more quizzical decisions of any NBA team recently, locking up your 12th guy. But they could pursue someone in free agency. It might just be like a cheaper guy, like the names I mentioned previously. Older veterans, Danny Green, Jay Crowder. I'm still interested in like making a run at restricted free agent Matisse Thybulle. Maybe a guy like Josh Richardson. Maybe a guy like Jalen McDaniels. I mean, even I'm interested in Naz Reid, although it doesn't seem like big man is going to be the ultimate need. Now that we know basically who's probably going to be on the team come opening night, at least we know 14 of the roster spots, where we have Ja Morant and Marcus Smart, it still feels light to me on dribblers. Still seems like maybe getting a point guard would be a good idea for that last roster spot. I don't know who the options are. I would be interested in trading like John Konchar for Monte Morris or something. I mean, Konchar might have a lot of utility still at the small forward spot because that is still a big question mark. I think Marcus Smart can play there alongside Ja and Desmond for most of the time, but Zaire Williams being a question mark, David Roddy, Jake LaRavia being a question mark. The fact that small forward is still a question mark, maybe you keep John Konchar for that use in the regular season. He can fill a need there. But looking at the depth chart, you have Ja and Marcus, the 2 point guards, or 2 guys who can play point guard. Shooting guard, you basically have Bane and Kennard, or maybe we'll classify Konchar here. Then on the wing, the bigger wing, you have Zaire and David Roddy, and Jake LaRavia. And then with your bigs, maybe you're set with your bigs, Jaren Jackson Jr., Santi Aldama, Kenneth Lofton Jr., Steven Adams, Xavier Tillman, and the recovering Brandon Clark. If you count Brandon Clark, even though he's out with an Achilles injury, although Zach Kleiman said he thought there was a chance. I think he said he's going to play a good portion of next season, which I'm going to remain skeptical of that being the case. But they have 6 guys who are bigs. Jackson and Steven Adams, Aldama, Tillman, Lofton, Brandon Clark. They have maybe 3 guys who are sort of small forwards. Zaire, Roddy, LaRavia, Konchar. And then you have 2 shooting guards, Bane and Kennard, 2 point guards, Ja and Marcus. And, of course, Ja is suspended for 25 games. So because of that, looking at the free agent targets, that's maybe why I have Josh Richardson circled. He can kind of play 1 through 3, handle the basketball, can guard 1 through 3, can shoot pretty well. I like that fit. Maybe there are other guys who end up getting available through trades. There's going to be a lot of roster shakeup in the NBA. And, of course, I will have a future episode outlining all of my favorite free agent targets for the Grizzlies as that kicks off in a couple of weeks. But right now we can talk a little bit about the guy they did take with the 45th pick, and then I want to mention a lot of the stuff that Zach Kleiman said to the local media after the draft. So G.G. Jackson was the youngest player in the draft. He played a year at South Carolina. He was one of the top high school prospects, and then he reclassified so he could get to the NBA earlier. Because of that, that's why he's so young. is an example of how young he is. He's 2 months younger than Bronny James. This guy doesn't turn 19 until the NBA season starts. Now, he's a long-term prospect or project. He is one of the only guys to ever be drafted in the NBA with a negative box plus minus for his college days. South Carolina got destroyed while he was on the court. He apparently deer in headlights when it comes to team defense. He had maturity issues, which makes sense, I guess, according to his age. Has all the physical gifts. That's why he was such a top high school prospect. I think he was the highest ranked high school prospect that South Carolina ever got. So he's going to spend a full year in the G League, and then we wait and see, what he is probably next year. He's got ideal NBA size. He has Paul George size. So he's a large, athletic wing with good offensive skills or offensive tools, potential there. He apparently has individual defensive skill potential, but did not show it. And questions about his motor, about his effort, and maturity, and that's why he slips so far. And the Grizzlies are able to take him at 45. So that's a long-term play that they'll try there. The guy they drafted at 56, Tarik Biberovic. I don't know how to say his name. I apologize. He is a draft and stash and probably will never, ever come over. He'll just be used as currency in future trades. Whenever you need to send something, the NBA rules require you to send something in a trade, so they could always include the rights to Tarik Biberovic, who, by the way, plays for Fenerbahce, which is a Turkish team that my mouth wants to pronounce Fibonacci. He is currently teammates with former Grizzlies players Marko Guduric, Tyler Dorsey, and Nick Kalathis. So that draft and stash guy, again, keeps one of your 3 two-way spots available. I mean, technically they have a team option on Jacob Gilyard, who, if you remember, played in the final game of the regular season last year for the Grizzlies. They're not going to bring him back. Undersized point guard. I'd be super surprised if they brought him back. I think they're going to find someone on the two-way spot. Might be someone who's a little bit older who can help at point guard while Ja is suspended. Might be another project they're interested in. But you have Vince Williams Jr. and then Gigi Jackson, who are going to be on your two-way deals, and you have a third spot this season, so they'll be able to sign another player there. And then we got 14 guys on the roster and an opening for a veteran. Now, that, again, I think fills what a lot of us were asking for. That's why I called the plan conventional. If all of us normal Grizzlies podcasters were thinking it like, hey, let's get immediate help, proven NBA help, instead of drafting a guy to be another project. And then let's maybe use our MLE on somebody to bring in somebody who can help out the roster, maybe help out the locker room, be a good example. And that seems to be what the Grizzlies are doing right now. Now, Zach Kleiman, I think the main takeaways from what he said to the media, he said there's going to be no more big swings regarding the roster. We put that together basically. When you send out the first-round picks and Tyus Jones, that matching salary that we considered movable, that's your move. So there's no more big swings coming, although technically if there were, he wouldn't tell us. And then Kleiman addressed, of course, the Ja Morant issue. This is the first time anyone with the Grizzlies organization has spoken to the media since the suspension was announced. Zach Kleiman said he felt the league's suspension was appropriate. He pointed out that the relationship is not strained between the team and Ja. He did say a couple of very interesting things. This quote that was transcribed by Drew Hill I thought was very interesting. He said, quote, "There were things we would challenge him on or call him out, and it would be 2 steps forward and 1 step back. There is no room for steps back at this point." Kleiman also echoed fan sentiment by saying, quote, "Couldn't care less about words. Ja has to prove it. it's easy to say the right things. So the Ja Morant situation remains kind of a work in progress, trying to get him up to speed to where his behavior needs to be, frankly, and then he's going to have to clear some hurdles to be reinstated by the league. There are still some questions about like the specifics about the suspension. Kleiman said that he's allowed for individual workouts in the team facilities, but it still sounds like he's not allowed to be around the teammates or participate in practices, and that sounds like not allowed to participate in training camp. And the Grizzlies still, put out that suspension saying he was suspended from all team activities. They haven't rescinded that publicly, but he is allowed in the facilities. He's just, I don't think, going to be allowed to practice like in training camp with his teammates or anything. Other things that Zach Kleiman said, he said they will hire another assistant coach. There is an assistant coach spot open on the bench with Darko Rajakovic leaving to go to the Raptors. He said Steven Adams should be available for the start of the regular season. Should is not will be available, but we can cross our fingers for that. And he mentioned specifically that David Roddy, Jake LaRavia, Vince Williams Jr., Kenneth Lofton Jr., and Gigi Jackson would be participating in Summer League. There was no mention of Zaire Williams. Seems like Zaire should play. He's still pretty young, and of course had a bad season last year, but maybe they don't want to submit him to that pressure. Like, what if he looks bad compared to Gigi Jackson? That's a bad sign. I don't know. My perspective would be all basketball is good basketball for Zaire at this point, but they will deal, obviously, with that as best they see fit. And, of course, we'll find out very, very soon. I'm sure they will announce the roster shortly, the full roster. The league will announce the Vegas Summer League schedule. Now that they know where everyone got drafted, they'll try to, make good matchups, sort of, and spread out like the marquee names. I think they wanted to make sure there was no wild surprises in the draft. And basically there weren't. I guess I can talk about how the whole draft affected the Grizzlies. I don't think it really does that much. No Western Conference teams made like that big of moves. I think maybe we can consider the Warriors trade for Chris Paul, moving Jordan Poole for Chris Paul. Does that make the Warriors better? Probably. Does that really change how good they were? I don't think significantly. I don't think they moved like far ahead of the Grizzlies or even ahead of the Grizzlies or anything. I think they're definitely kind of same tier as where the Grizzlies are going to be. I thought the Mavericks made a couple of okay moves, but didn't really add any wing talent. They picked up big men. They picked up Rashawn Holmes from the Kings. So that's all kind of interesting stuff, but didn't really change any like balance of power or anything. So that, I guess, is all we need to do to update draft night for the Grizzlies. Again, reemphasizing, I'm excited that it looks like they're going to add a veteran in free agency. I'm excited about the acquisition of Marcus Smart, even if I try to ignore maybe the optimism I had for roster building a couple years ago. I do think Marcus Smart helps the team a lot. And then, of course, we will get to see Summer League basketball 10 days from today. On Monday, July 3rd, the Grizzlies have a basketball game in the Utah Summer League. So it's not very long where we get to see some of these young guys show what they can do on a basketball court. So anyways, there is your Grizzlies draft night wrap-up update. I'm going to now play with maybe some rotation builders and see what I think the rotation should be now that we know this is probably basically essentially what the roster is going to look like in the fall. I mean, maybe whoever they sign in free agency will be someone who has a chance of starting for the Grizzlies, but I'm not sure. I think it might be more of a locker room guy, maybe more of that point guard. If you have any free agent suggestions, by all means, reach out and send them to me. Anyways, thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the Grits and Grinds YouTube channel. Hope you have a great weekend. I will talk to you soon. Go Grizz.